Don't try to outrun one of Dominaria's grizzlies. It'll catch you, knock you down, and eat you. Of course, you could run up a tree. In that case, you get a nice view before it knocks the tree down and eats you. Grizzly bears. How's it going, everyone? I'm Josh from Elder Drunken Highlander, and today I'm coming to you with a deck list that is very near and dear to my jank-encrusted heart, Ayula Bearstorm. Now before we get to this deck, there are some things you need to know about me. The first is, I love bears. I enjoy everything about them from their appearance to their attitude. Bears are so dang cool! If my unbridled enthusiasm for this perfect, infallible tribe ends up becoming unbearable for you as a viewer, feel free to click off now before it ruins your day. The last thing I need everyone to know before we really get into it is that this is my favorite deck, ever. I have it almost completely foiled out with all the basic lands altered to have bears on them. I own several foil copies of Ayula to use in my commander/command zone/a decoration. I even have an entire binder dedicated to just my collection of cards with bears in the art, and I actively trade and collect to expand it. I have a 3D cardboard bear head mounted on my wall, and like a polar bear digging in an ice den, this is all just barely scratching the surface. My love for bears and Magic can be traced back to my first time ever holding a Magic card. I started playing Magic with my brother sometime in 2010. My parents used to play when they were younger, and they gave us their old cards and a rulebook when they found them in the attic. While searching through my parents' collection, what I initially fell in love with wasn't the mechanics, but the flavor text. My absolute favorite was Grizzly Bears. I thought the text was hilarious, plus, compared to the other cards we had, it wasn't too bad. Grizzly Bears became a fast favorite of mine. By the time I started playing, mostly losing, with people in school, I had given them a special place in my binder. I also started collecting other bears to go with them. By the time Wild Beastmaster was printed and returned to Ravnica, and after a string of good bear cards in the Innistrad block, I had enough bears/bear themed cards to make a full-on bear deck. It was actually pretty decent, and one with Overrun, which happens to have a bear in its art. When Sirach Dragonclaw was printed, I migrated the deck to EDH and slotted in Time Ebb and some other cool cards. The deck was neat, but in the years I had it only got itself 2 wins, both times due to grievous misplays on my opponent's side. I thought that Bears was forever destined to be a forgotten creature type, consigned to the dark nether reaches of viability to never see play against a competent and/or sober opponent capable of putting up a fight again. That was, until Ayula, Queen Among Bears, was spoiled. Ayula presented my tribe with its first real chance to take some games. When I saw her, I decided I wanted to take advantage of it as much as possible. I've been running bears for so long. Now that others would be joining me on the bear wagon, it was time to elevate things to the next level. This deck is the next level, or as close to it as we can get. Get ready for the, I hope, best bear deck on the internet. This is not a casual Ayula deck. This deck aims to be the strongest and most competitive Ayula deck out there. It is designed to take games by being aggressive in the early game with Ayula and some bears, and then resolve a draw engine to help us transition into the mid game. In the late game, we can combo out using a cheap knockoff version of the Ayula Bearstorm combo. Why take it this far? Why play Bearstorm? Good question, hypothetical viewer. The answer is simple. I want bears to win. Heck, bears deserve to win. Look at them. Obvious winners. This deck is me and some others trying to push Ayula to the utmost she can be because bears are perfect creatures and high power pods should know this too. So what is our power level? Normally I save this part for the end of the video, but since power level is such a huge focus for this deck, I will mention it right up front. This is a high power deck. It's very fast, can combo out, and has as much fast mana and creature tutors as I could afford. This deck tries hard, unlike other green commanders that barely have to put in effort. Ayula Bearstorm can threaten to win consistently on turns 4 to 7. It can also disrupt the board earlier than that by fighting down dorks and hate bears as well as pressuring life totals in the early game. Look to keep opening hands with 1 to 2 lands, 1 to 2 early accelerants, 1 to 2 bears, and a draw engine. If you don't have a clear way of getting card advantage, the hand may be too risky to keep. Running out of gas is the downfall of many Ayula decks, and since you need to cast a lot of bears to stay on top, it is essential that you get your draw engine running. Depending on your opponent's decks from there, you will either want to go fast and slam down Ayula, or ramp a bit and try to resolve a draw engine first. If you're planning on bearing down on your opponents, look to cast Ayula as early as possible, turn 1 or turn 2, and then begin to resolve some bears. If you plan on keeping your hand size up with an early source of draw, you will want to slam down our Bear Queen on turn 3. Regardless of when you stick her, once you stick Ayula, it's time to start resolving bears. With your first bear boy, you're usually going to want to bring Ayula up to a 4-4. Killing dorks is a good strategy, but I usually find that if I don't buff Ayula early, it can be hard to kill tougher creatures like hate bears once they start coming down on turns 2 to 3. Around this time, if we haven't already, we're going to want to pump the brakes on creatures and resolve a draw engine. This will allow us to continue to play creatures and fight shit, while our opponents, hopefully, remain behind on board state. Sometimes we don't have to go much further, but we will naturally draw into a win via combat damage. Other times, we're going to have to rely on recurring Crater Hoof Behemoth or Great Oak Guardian a few times before we swing in. If the game goes long enough and we are still failing to push through and win, we can always enter the Bearstorm. The Bearstorm refers to our shitty Brostorm combo that we run in the deck. We can use either Selvala, Heart of the Wilds, or Priest of Titania in combination with Haste and Temur Sabertooth or Cloudstone Curio to generate infinite mana and enters the battlefield triggers. Great Oak Guardian and enough dorks works as well. From here, we can wipe the board and make infinite power and toughness to swing in with Haste for a win. Now, bear with me as I get combo looted and give you the breakdown of the Bearstorm for those not familiar with the combo. There are a few different paths you can take to execute this combo, but the end goal is always the same. Infinite mana, infinite Ayula triggers. What you need is a way to tap creatures and produce a bunch of mana. Cards like Selvala, Priest of Titania, Ashaya, Cryptolith Rite, and even just having a lot of dorks can help with this. The next step is a way to untap these mana sources. If you have a single big mana source, such as Priest of Titania, you can return it to your hand using Temur Sabertooth and then recast it and equip it for haste. Tap it, and then do the Kansas City Shuffle with the Greaves to send it back to your hand again. If you have a board full of dorks instead, Great Oak Guardian or Eternal Witness and Benefactor's Draught provide the mana, and in the case of the Draught, also the draw to end things. Eternal Witness also presents the opportunity to do one of my favorite mono-green combos, which is spamming Beast Within on every single permanent and then fighting the beasts so our opponents are left with nothing. Once we are satisfied with our Bearstorm, just swing in with an infinitely big Ayula and whatever other bears you have lying around. If you need haste, drawing into a Finale of Devastation will do it for you. Other Ayula decks focus on combat damage through anthems and equipment, and while I think this could be fun, it is a strategy that most players are ready for, and just won't work at higher powered tables. By relying on combo as a fallback, we still have a reliable and powerful way to win, and by taking inspiration from Elfball, Brostorm, and other bursty card advantage focused green builds, we can compensate for Ayula's typical weaknesses of running out of gas in the mid to late game. It also gives us bursty combo potential to take unsuspecting players by surprise, which, honestly, is probably the best way to get people to respect Ayula, instead of making memes about a deck whose name doesn't even make sense. Like, are there even any planes in the deck? Or ways to win, really? What the heck is a Bear Force 1? Why not just call it an embarrassment? Barely functional, polar opposite of good, slow like it just woke up from hibernation. It's poo. The deck just ain't good, honey. I can go on. I literally have more bear puns than that deck has good cards. Don't look at that deck. Look at this one. This one gets more than just sympathy victories. Real talk though, meme decks are great too, and there's a real reason I feature Bear Force 1 on my Master Primer. I just thought it'd be funny to talk some shit. IDK, if you don't like it, maybe I can go on game nights and we can duke it out and settle this fake beef, and no? But should I try? Notable inclusions. These are the top cards or groups of cards that I feel bear the major weight of this deck. The Bears! It's a bear deck, and these are the creatures we use to release Pandemonium. We don't need to analyze these guys too much. Most of them don't even have abilities. I will say that when it comes to our bears, the cheaper the better, except for like Chameleon Colossus, who's probably our best bear. Just look at these guys, don't you love them? Let's just take a minute to appreciate the bears. Wasn't that nice? Words of Wilder. This card is an all-star with our draw engines and Ayula, especially Sylvan Library. It also prevents us from drawing out, which was actually relevant for me once. Mostly though, this guy lets us chain bears into more bears. Bears on bears on bears, if you will. Beast Whisperer. One day I plan to alter this guy into a Bear Whisperer, but until then, he is still the best draw engine in my deck since he can be tutored easily to the battlefields. Plus, he is an elf, which is relevant for certain reasons. The Elves. Runeclaw Bear says it best. The magic of the elves certainly does power this deck, and cards like Selvala and Priest of Titania help us achieve that. We have such a high dork density that I have actually considered Elvish Archdruid. Erratic Portal, Temur Sabertooth, and Cloudstone Curio. These allow us to spam cast bears with Ayula and or a draw engine on the board in order to fuel our deck. Grizzled veteran bear players will know the importance of saving these cards until the right time. Honorable mention, High Bear Nation's End. It's like a really bad birthing pod. This card gets us advantage and tempo, and there are a number of lines with it that can serve a number of uses in this build. I just cut it from my main build, sadly. But I still wanted to mention it because I think it's fucking sweet. Also, it's like really nice in like a Staxy Ayula build, and the art is fantastic for foil peels, especially with those new Snowlands that just came out. I'm just saying, people are sleeping on this card for so many reasons. Notable exclusions. Here are some cards I don't run, and the reasons why I left them out. Normally this is a section for other deck building considerations, but in this case it's mostly cards that I see in a lot of deck lists that I think generally make them weaker and could be replaced with stronger cards. Doubling Season. This card needs other cards or a combination of cards to be good, and I don't like paying 5 mana to do nothing. This is the card people most frequently suggest for this deck, and just no. Hardened Scales is slightly better, I ran that for a little bit, but even that is kind of just a do-nothing card in its own, which I don't think this deck wants any of. It already has to run a bunch of them. You know, the bears. Tribal Support. I think this is where most Ayula decks get hung up. It is hard to balance card advantage, bears, and tribal win cons all in one deck. The solution is just to make your win con card advantage of bears. These tribal cards don't do much of anything when they are by themselves, whereas draw engines allow our bears to at least replace themselves. I guess what I'm saying is that more draw engines should be like Vanquisher's Banner. Herald's Horn and other similar tribal cards get a shout out here for at least being better than Coat of Arms, but I personally don't think they are good enough still, at least for my list. Darksteel Plate, Champion's Helm, Commander's Plate, Asceticism, and other similar cards are just too much mana, not enough haste. Just Protection isn't good enough for us to run. They need to forward our game plan too. Like, Ayula's 2 mana, she's cheaper than a date to the dollar store, just fucking recast her or something. Ashaya and Ranger Loops. While they are a great way to generate infinite mana, the Ranger pieces don't do anything on their own for the deck, whereas all my fake Bearstorm cards are great for me on their own. The combo also needs an additional outlet in order to create a big bear. Ashaya is just fine on her lonesome, acting as a second Cryptolith right. Expensive cards. I just don't own them yet, but I will. Cradle Crypt and Mock Simon are my biggest 3. I don't want to use any proxies for this deck. I like how it looks using all real cards. The aesthetic is very important to me. I'm pro proxy for all my other decks, and if you want to use proxies against this deck, I'm all for it. I don't know, I want this deck to be shiny and nice. Alternative builds. I alluded to these earlier in the video a few times. This is not my only Ayula deck, and I am not the only brewer who is trying to push Ayula to her limits. I have linked my Master Ayula Primer in the description. Within it, you will find more details on my build as well as details on my Stacks build, Ayula Hate Bears, and my casual build, Ayula Overrun Tribal, which is still better than Bear Force 1 by the way. Most notably, however, you will also find a section on my Contemporaries and a link to the Ayula Brews channel on our Discord. Other people who have made amazing Ayula decks will have their lists there. Like I said earlier, I want to build the best bear EDH deck possible, and I certainly can't do that alone. Let's get to brainstorming the best Bearstorming deck together. That's why I'm asking you, viewers, to submit your deck lists and suggestions to the Ayula channel in our official Discord that I'm linking below in this video. We will share deck lists, card choices, and play strategies, as well as discuss bear memes and other Magic content. I hope to see some of you there soon. Like I said, I already have some deck lists that I think are particularly spicy linked in my Master Primer, and I want to add even more, so please submit your lists in our channel's Discord and add your voice to our deck building collective. Overall, Ayula is a fun, powerful, and exciting commander to play. Whether you're playing her with a Bear Force 1 meme deck, which I know I just spent the entire video hating on, but I do actually really enjoy that deck too. It was a joke, it was a meme, it was for the last fight me. If you are playing something like this build, there are barely any limits to what you can do, and it feels so satisfying when you poo off a Winnie. Thank you so much for bearing with me and watching this video. Make sure you like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. This deck and this video are both an extreme passion project of mine, so if you share even an ounce of my love for Ayula, come chat in our Discord. We have a Looking for Games spell table channel that is relatively poppin', so if you want to play some games with us, definitely come stop by. We also have a Twitter where I post my lukewarm takes and memes I make on my iPhone, or a Patreon where you can sign up for some dank rewards, including custom altar sleeves, stickers, and other crafts handmade by Josh. Hey, that's me! Again, we appreciate your viewership, and I'll see you next time.